Let's talk supply chain. So welcome to the show, Krenar.
Thanks, Sarah. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. I mean, you've been on the show a couple of times. It's been a while since you've been on the show. So we're going to obviously get into what Tive does a little bit more because things have changed since the last time you've been on the show. And what you do at Tive really fascinates me because it's all about technology, AI, efficiency, but at the same time, there's always been so much heart in what you do. You talk about connection. Your mission is all about people. And you say that you want to pioneer beyond what we thought possible. So what others hold near and dear arrives on time and in full, which I love. And really, supply chain is all about people. It's great to see them brought together so purposefully. So I can't wait to find out more. And one of the things I don't think we've done in the past is dive a little bit deeper into your background as an entrepreneur, as a founder, because I think you've been part of some really incredible innovations and consulted large organizations on theirs. So talk us through that journey and how it led you to found Tive.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Sarah. And again, I'm really excited to be on this podcast. I love what you guys do. So this is gonna be exciting hour here. One of the things, so founding wise, where I came from, I originally grew up in Kosovo, came to US when I was 17. I came in people wonder how I got here. I came in as an exchange student. So I lived with a host family in high school. But throughout my journey, I studied mathematics, computer engineering, electronics. So I did my undergrad in mathematics and in computer engineering, and I did my grad in electrical engineering. I graduated from Tufts University, and my undergrad was at Norwich University. But one of the things throughout this journey is I always worked for startups since I was a kid. I've never worked for a big company. Okay. Even back home, I worked for a TV station. That's where I kind of fell in love with a little bit of media. I used to do their 3D animations, and it was a startup. We started from scratch in June, and we launched it in September, the first day of the TV station. Wow. It was pretty exciting to see, to get with the team and like build something from scratch. That's where I fell in love with that you can actually build something out of nothing. There was nothing there before, and then there's something, and that kind of that journey really excited me, and I never gave up on that. I always wanted to be part of it. And when I came to US, I worked for a few startups. One was called Bitwave Semiconductor. We built the world's first software-defined radio on a chip. So it was one chip that did 2G, 3G, 4G, all in a single chip. And I used to design part of those chips. And then I consulted for companies like Viasat, Olympus, designing chipsets for them. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of experience in wireless and communications. And then I worked for an MIT startup, which was called ETA Devices. And I was the first employee there. We built the world's most efficient base stations. They go on cell towers.
Wow.
So base stations, chips, wireless, a lot of experience in engineering side. And that's kind of my background.
I love that. There's so much creativity and innovation there. And you've seen technology really be able to evolve, but you've kind of had your hands in it as well, because you've been a part of that evolution to really see what is possible, where you've started, where you've been, what's possible, and then really what's possible even after that too, when it comes to Tive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the reasons why I started the company. So when I got married, my wife's dad, he's my father-in-law, has a trucking company, which he sold last year.
Okay.
He retired. But every time I would go to his house, I think most people know this story, he would be on the phone trying to figure out where his truck drivers are. And I started building GPS trackers for his trucks. So I built a little app with these like PHP and MySQL. I don't know how many people know on the code side, but a little bit of app for him to see where his drivers are. And then this other driver that was his friend had 20 trucks, started tracking his trucks. But what I noticed is there was a lot of companies tracking trucks, but nobody was actually tracking the cargo behind the truck.
Right.
There was these temperature sensors that were, I don't know, I think I have one. It's like, they look something like this. There were loggers, but not, they would just monitor temperature, but not send any data in real time. Everything was after the fact. And that's where I came up with the idea. But one thing that you just mentioned, which I want to reiterate here, is the insights that I built throughout my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew where LTE chipsets were going. I knew where the LTE technology was going. I knew that Internet of Things was got to be the next thing. I knew that the cost of these chips was going down. I could see the cost of SIM cards going down. I could see the power consumption of accelerometers, temperature sensors, light sensors, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all of these getting better and better. I'm like, this is the time to start. This was in 2015.
Wow.
I'm just going to dive into this and I'll figure out on the way what happens. But I thought timing sometimes is very important. And I started, I believe, the company really on the right time.
So you take that crystal ball analogy to a whole nother level because you could see it way beyond everybody else. All right. So let's understand a little bit more about what you do at Tive then. So give us an overview. Who is Tive? What do you do? How do you help your customers?
Yeah. So at Tive, what we do every single day is we make sure that our customers have the least amount of shipping problems as they can. I think that's the simplest way to put it. There's always issues. There's always challenges, as you know, as you're trying to move goods from point A to point B. And there's a lot of parties involved.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is, how do you know what's happening? And we provide ground truth data to what's happening with those shipments for all of our customers. And as we do that, customers build a lot of trust to the data that we provide with them. And we can go into detail on how we do that. And they really understand what's happening with their shipments. And then they get to improve their supply chains. They get to have better communications, better conversations with their stakeholders, better conversations with carriers, with LSPs, with third-party logistics, with their receivers, with the shipper, with the supplier. And the quality of conversations builds better quality of supply chain.
Yeah, well, and also a competitive advantage, right? Everybody is looking at their supply chains, their supply chain data, how they work with their suppliers, how they work with their partners, how they work internally, and really putting it together into that competitive advantage for them to maneuver through the market. And you really provide a lot of support where that's concerned. And you work with a lot of incredible brands, global shippers, logistics service providers, retailers. Do you have an ideal client? Like, are you best suited to work with maybe enterprise level, or do you help sort of SMEs, small to medium-sized businesses as well?
We do both, actually. So one thing, and I'll answer the enterprise and SMB first, and then I'll jump into verticals.
Okay.
So one thing that we've noticed is we're really good for both. And the reason why we're really good for SMBs and also mid-market and enterprise is because of the simplicity of our solution. So the way our solution works is customers get these trackers. All they do is press a button, put it on a shipment, and they get 100% visibility of where the shipments are, but also the condition. How hot, how wet, how cold did somebody open the trailer? There's a light sensor to tell if somebody opened trailers, boxes, everything in real time. But that's simplicity, right? All we need to do is ship you these trackers at the location at which the shipment's originating.
Mm-hmm.
You press a button and you have 100% visibility. Now, whether you're an SMB or an enterprise level, the motion of that is the same. Mm-hmm. So we target the both, and we've right now in Q1, we were, just for metrics purposes, we brought 1.5 new customers per day.
Wow.
And the quarter before that was like 1.2, and before that was 0.8. So I think one day we'll get to 10 customers or more a day.
You're going to have to come back on the show when that happens.
Yes. But that shows that we can bring smaller businesses too, not just the enterprise, because that's the enterprise level we won't be able to bring at that scale. But the verticals and where we play really well, this is also a really good question. Food and perishable, that's an area that vertical is really strong for us, and we play really well there. Life sciences, that's an area and pharmaceuticals, if you think of their high value temperature sensitive. And a lot of logistics service providers, 3PLs, use us every day because they provide this value added service to all their clients. But in a nutshell, if you have a time sensitive or temperature sensitive or high value shipment, or all three, or 2 out of 3, we play really, really well.
I mean, let's play around with that for a second, because so if everybody knows, I've been in the freight forwarding business for a very, very long time. And I was doing ocean freight, air freight, trucking, and the amount of insurance claims that I had to deal with and the work that came with insurance claims. Okay. So you had to go through different parties. They maybe had to send somebody to go and look at it. All the paperwork that's involved, even if the product is not necessarily luxury, but it could take down a line at a factory which means that it's going to cost that company tens of thousands, maybe millions of dollars. I mean, regardless of the actual like value of the particular product, this saves so much time, so much money in a variety of ways through multiple different supply chains. And the fact that it is one click, I was talking to some people recently about some technology that they were really excited about using and having their platform and being a part of their platform. And the number one thing they said was that they had one click, like a one-click dashboard, a one-click this, a one-click that. So you've really hit it on the head, but I also wanted to make sure that other people think about the repercussions of knowing where the product is if, because lots of different things can happen in a supply chain or a logistics move.
Yeah, I mean, we track shipments that are very, very low value, but if they don't get to a particular car wash factory, the car wash factory has to shut down. So we track a lot of parts for companies like auto parts is another good example, because if those auto parts don't get to the factory on time, they have to stop the line, like you mentioned. So yeah.
Aircraft on ground would be another one, right?
Yeah.
You've got an aircraft waiting for a part, which means that it can't be flown. AOG. I mean, because I used to be an AOG, so I know how stressful that can be. And if you can avoid that, everybody wants to avoid that. All right, let's talk about some of the big challenges in the industry at the moment when it comes to logistics. So over the last few years, we've seen labor shortages, increased pricing, changing compliance, changing capacity and demand. Sustainability issues, a rise in theft and fraud. So it's been a bit of a difficult time in logistics. What have you seen from your perspective and that of your customers?
I would say two really, like just based on all the words that you mentioned and the various challenges, two that stick out quite a bit. One is theft and the other one's compliance.
Yeah.
But theft, if I just look at our inbound leads, which we get quite a few every single day, I watch them quite often on what's coming, because they usually write a message like, oh, I'm looking to buy trackers. Oh, I have this issue. I'm looking. And the amount of times that the word theft has come up in the last couple of months it's not comfortable almost at that point.
Wow.
I think that is quite challenging right now in the market. And we hear it from our customers, whether it's tools, whether it's high value whether it's TVs, whether it's solar panels, whether it's laptops, phones, there's stuff happening quite a bit. Just with one phone company, we're in the middle of the pilot. Every week we catch 2-3 events.
Wow.
There's just a lot of smartphones being shipped, and there's drivers or other people opening them and trying to see what, and then they obviously destroy the tracker, and we know exactly where it's happening and where it's being destroyed.
Wow.
But that's on theft. And then obviously customer takes action on that. Our job is to really report those incidents and do them in the highest quality possible. And then the customer can figure out what to do. We don't get involved as much after that. But the second one is compliance. So you hire a carrier, you hire a logistics service provider. Are they really compliant to your SOPs? Are they really compliant to on-time delivery? Are they really compliant to all the things that you mentioned that you want from, as far as the service quality and cost from your carrier?
Yeah.
And that's something that we've seen more and more requests from customers say, hey, I'm trying to figure out whether everything that I'm paying for is in compliance.
Yeah, it's a really important one. I think, there's lots of rules and regulations, and they vary by region. They vary by country, and it's very important to be compliant because there's a lot of risk in there. There could be some costs in there, if you get some fines or different things like that. So that's really important. I love to hear that you help with that. So you mentioned the word visibility before. So how does visibility kind of fit into all of this? Because visibility really has the power to positively impact many, if not all of the issues that I just mentioned. But a lot of organizations are still struggling with it. I feel like we've been talking about this word for so long. So what does visibility mean to you? Why is it so important that we, not only recognize the value of visibility, but also that we translate that into supply chain strategies, processes, tools?
Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier, right? So think of visibility as you're running an operation, you're running your supply chain, the best way that you can run something is if you have ground truth data of what's happening with your supply chain. Let's call that, in our case, that Tive visibility. Ground truth data of what's happening in the world of operations and supply chain, outside of the four walls of warehouse, outside of the four walls of the retailer, outside of the four walls of your manufacturer, everything in between. So all the inventory that's flowing in transit, that ground truth data lets you run a business better, right? Because now you can be more proactive around what's happening if there's issues. But on top of that, you can build, like you said, processes and tools. And because if you did, let's say something's late or there's a temperature excursion on a tarmac, if you know everything after the fact, when it arrives at the final destination, it's too late, it's gonna get rejected. You get into the things you mentioned, claims and fees, and a lot of waste of time. But if you figure out earlier on, imagine now you can build processes and tools that you mentioned that can let stakeholders involved with that shipment get involved as quickly as possible and resolve that issue as quickly as possible. And as you resolve the issues as quickly as possible, now you suddenly can operate more efficiently in your supply chain. And most importantly, you can scale better instead of being stuck at the scale that you're in today.
Well, I also think it helps with that blame game. Like, logistics is notorious for blame game, right? You know, the client, the service provider, the airline, the ocean carrier. I remember, I think we had a shipment coming from India and it came in soaking wet. And we were like, how did this even happen? And it took months to find out. And it was left out in the tarmac of an airport during the monsoon.
Oh, no.
And so it got completely soaked and nobody noted it down. Nobody said anything until it got to the client. The client was like, I can't use any of this. Now we've lost how much time between them having to get it from the factory, then them not being able to use it, then them having to pay for a new shipment, and it taking months to find out, what exactly happened to be able to submit a claim. If we'd have known that in real time, it would have changed the game for that particular shipment. I mean, granted, back then, we didn't have your type of technology, and I kind of wish that we had, because the amount of time I spent on this kind of stuff was just crazy.
Yeah, and it's still a lot of time being spent.
Absolutely. So let's talk about how you're doing it. Let's talk about your trackers. There are other trackers out there, but you have clients saying that your devices are the best and honestly ahead of the game. So talk to us about the trackers, the technology, what they do, what sets them apart from the other ones that are on the market.
Good question. There's a lot of trackers out there. I would say the thing that sets us apart is we've really built it purposely for supply chain and logistics, and for directors of logistics, for managers, for people who use this every single day and are involved. And the way we've done it is we built a device, a tracker, that is at the right cost with the right features and the right output that customers want.
Okay.
So we sell it for circa $50, but what it does, it measures temperature, humidity, light, very accurate location compared to all the other trackers. So we use 3 methods for location: GPS, Wi-Fi positioning. So we snip all the routers. This is from all the experience that I've had, as I mentioned earlier, from my background. So we snip all the Wi-Fi routers and figure out where the shipment is located. But also we use all the cell towers and we figure out where the shipment is located. And the combination of 2 or 3 of those gives us a very accurate location compared to others. In addition,
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, the other thing that, of course, we've done a really good job at is power consumption. So at the size, which is pretty small, as you can see, it can last for more than 100 days, even if it pings every hour. But if it pings every 6 hours, it can go like almost for 6 months. So being able to pack it with those features at the right cost, and being able to also have a device that's single use, so you use it once, and we obviously, for sustainability, we refurbish these, but also you can reuse it. You can recharge it and reuse it yourself, all in one. I think that's a really big difference compared to others. And that's just on the hardware side.
I love all of that. And I have a show idea for you that we will talk offline about, but it makes me think about some of these true crime shows where, they have to ping cell phone towers to find out where a cell phone was. And so we're doing that for supply chain, and I love to hear that. Now, one thing that you keep mentioning is ground truth. I have never heard this before. Where did that term come from?
That's a good question. So we've been working quite a bit around our product roadmaps, but it's primarily on where we're going with software in the last many months, but the last 3 months intensively. I personally have talked to almost 50 customers.
Okay.
The last couple of months, our customers, trying to figure out how we can help them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that comes up from customers is that, hey, you Tive provide ground truth data around what's happening with shipments. And the ground truth removes the blame game. I was just going to touch on that because you mentioned the blame game that happens. The blame game, if you think of it, the reason why it exists is because of lack of trust on data. If there was trust,
data, I think,
or lack of data
first, lack of trust of data second.
Second, yes. So if you can provide both data and trustworthy data and ground truth, which is trustworthy data around what's happening, I think the blame game disappears and people really start focusing on how do we make this better and how do we resolve these issues.
Which we should be anyways, because if you keep ruminating about a problem, talked about this earlier, you get far away from happiness. And who doesn't want to be happy in supply chain?
Totally agree.
I know I do. All right. So you also offer the Tive tags. Can you tell us about how they measure the temperature of a shipment, how clients can use your platform to monitor what's happening to the products as it moves through the journey? Is it different from the device that you just showed? Why is it just as important to know about the condition of the shipment as exactly where they are? I mean, I think I gave a really good example with that monsoon out of India, but if you've got another one, I'd love to hear it.
So this one, just to touch on Tive tag, this one is, I would call it not real time. So It's kind of semi-real time right now. So the way it works is there's a lot of temperature loggers in the market. They're USB loggers, and the yellow one that I showed. But the cost is still high. Sometimes it's $10, sometimes it's $15. This one is a single-digit dollar. Temperature logger. It can store 5,000 temperature points. You can set it to measure every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every hour. But what's cool is you just start it with a phone, and then you can stick it into a box, to a pallet, and at the end of the shipment, all you do is you take your phone and you just read it, and then you get to see, it's coming up, like all the temperature record throughout the journey.
Cool. So for everybody who is listening to this episode, Krenar just took the tag, just like a single-use tag with a cell phone, and put them together, like just put them beside.
It's like a payment when you pay at a store.
Yeah, and the information just showed up on his phone. I love that. That is great. That's so good.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And now this will store also the location where it got read. So it'll show that I'm in Boston. And if somebody reads it in California, it'll show the California location, but nothing, all the temperature data in between, but nothing in real time in between.
Got it. So they get the information at the other end, not throughout the shipment.
Correct. But it's very low cost.
Well, yeah, no, I love that.
It's the lowest cost in the market.
But it's really important when you're looking at perishables, when you're looking at life-saving products, right? You need to understand how they've been temperature controlled throughout the life cycle of a shipment. Can you imagine if something that's life-saving that was supposed to be at a certain temperature dipped in temperature for an hour? Is it still usable? If it's not usable, then what?
Yeah.
Or if you use it anyways and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, then what? Right? There's so many repercussions to that I don't even want to think about. But I'm glad that you have that so that everybody can sort of monitor it. So you have a motto that every shipment matters. I love that. It's simple but true. And we need to get out of the mindset that, a certain percentage of cargo will be lost, ruined, stolen, whatever, especially in these difficult times, right? Every penny counts. Customer experience counts. So talk to us about that and the impact that we could make on strained bottom lines and tough markets if we all truly honored that mantra for every shipment counts?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why we thought like, should we come up with a name that's like, oh, only high value shipments count, or only time sensitive shipments count? Then if you think of where the market is, that's where they focus on. But at the end of the day, in order to make this planet more efficient, in order to make entire supply chain more efficient, you have to almost live by and believe that every single shipment matters. If every single shipment matters, and we take care of every single shipment, like we take care of high value shipments, and we put as much visibility, as much effort into it, I think everything gets a little bit better and it gets a little bit more efficient. And let's say we're not okay with that cargo loss. We're not okay with food and perishables going waste, like the waste that happens in food, which of course has impact on carbon footprint, which also has an impact on sustainability. All of these things have effects, after effects. So if every shipment matters, I think, and every shipment got the care that it deserved, I think we would be in much better shape. And that's what we're trying to do.
It's kind of like when Ellen would end her show about kindness and how kindness matters as a reminder to everybody to be kind to one another. It's like, every shipment matters. So we have to be diligent. We have to change our mindset around one is more important than another, because it's not, right? Every shipment matters, kindness matters, and they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. Now, the value of this, that's like a good point, right? The value of the shipment changes, but the truck driving it is still consuming the same amount of gas. The airplane flying it still consuming the same amount of kerosene. The ship sailing it, it's the same. So the carbon footprint, sustainability, the effect on the environment and the world is the same, whether it's toilets being transported or 10 carats of gold, 10 pounds, like a big brick of gold.
Well, so let's talk about sustainability. You mentioned it before, you've mentioned it now, and, we have to be weaving sustainable products, practices through everything that we do if we're going to make a difference. At the beginning of the year, I always encourage people, to go and pick a sustainable development goal rather than a New Year's resolution, and work towards one of those throughout the year. Right. And I think it's important if we just do a little bit every single time. And you're tackling sustainability from multiple different angles. You're treating every shipment as important. And that helps reduce returns, waste. Your products have sustainability in mind. And I think you have non-lithium trackers. Your tags are reusable. So talk to us about sustainability and why how we ship matters so much.
Yes. And I want to say that in that case, we've been pioneers, because if you think of trackers, they have lithium batteries, and the general view in our world has been, oh, we just make a tracker, put a lithium battery, GPS chip in there, a cellular chip in there, and here we go. You have visibility on the shipment. But nobody actually took the extra step, is what does this mean for the environment? Because a lot of these get thrown into trash. As they get thrown into trash, they go in landfills, lithium. There's a lot of challenges that around carbon footprint. So that we did a couple of things. We were the first in the world to release single-use 5G ready trackers, but we were also the first ones in the world to release single-use and multi-use, but non-lithium based trackers. So we replaced the lithium battery with a nickel metal hydrate, which is much, much better for the environment. And that has helped us quite a bit. Also get a lot of new customers, but like when you ship something and you put a tracker, you sometimes have to put the UN 3481, the dangerous goods sticker.
Yes.
With no lithium batteries, you don't have to put that. So customers have it even. So you got not just sustainability, but you got better customer experience for our customers. And customers just love shipping with non-lithium trackers because it's one less headache and it's better for the environment. The other thing that we've done is we encourage and we even incentivize our customers to return these trackers and let's say recycle them.
Yep.
So 40% this quarter in Q1 of our trackers were recycled, which is 30%. I think it was Q4 and maybe 10, 20% in Q1 of last year. So we've we're growing that quite a bit. I believe we can get to 60, 70% one day, where all these trackers are recycled. And I think it's just much better for the environment.
Let's do that. If you're not in touch with TerraCycle, they might be able to help with that. You and I can talk offline about it, because I know they help a lot of different companies recycle a whole bunch of different things, and they're global, I believe. So let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah. And I like that you're thinking about that, right? Because everybody's thinking about it in different ways. And you might think, a tracker, what's the big deal? Well, it's a big deal. There's a lot of shipments out there. Some people won't use trackers because of that particular challenge. And we want people to use trackers, because at the end of the day, all of these things will eliminate waste globally in a variety of different ways. And so it's little things like this that really change perspectives, change hearts and minds, and puts us on, at least a little bit of a track to get there. And like I said, every little bit helps with that. So let's bring all of this together with a case study. Can you share an example of how you've worked with a customer, maybe the ROI and benefit they saw from working with you?
Yeah, just to add a little bit on that, and I'll jump to ROI.
Sure.
We've shipped more than 1.5 million trackers.
Wow.
And when I started, I'm like, one day we're going to ship 1 million. One day we might get to 10 million, 20 million, 100 million trackers. Can I, as a CEO and as a founder of this company, this was a few years ago, think that I'm actually doing the right thing for the world by shipping millions and millions and millions of lithium batteries into trash? The answer is no. So I always have that in my mind. I always think about that. And we're going to continue to do as good and possibly better than anyone else in the world when it comes to sustainability. But that thought is always in my mind, just so you know.
It's one of the reasons why you're one of my favorite people in this.
Thank you. So ROI, there's so many examples. I have a list, but these are public too on case studies. But Optimized Courier, which is one of our customers, they had a shipment that was very valuable. Pharma shipment was $500,000, and it was going to go from Durham to Memphis, Tennessee, and it had a stop in Charlotte, and it was suddenly going to it was supposed to be at 17 degrees Celsius, between 15 and 25. So think of ambient temperature, but it was going down to below 8, down to almost 2 degrees Celsius. And they noticed that alert immediately at the Charlotte stop, and they were able to call a logistics service provider. They were able to call a courier in this case, and figure out what was happening. And what we realized is that the shipment was supposed to be on the 15 to 25
temperature
control the temperature, but they put it in a 2 to 8 environment. But we saved $500,000 with that customer.
Wow.
And then with Geodis had $1 million shipment of servers, and they had no clue what was going on. They had no clue. Luckily they had placed a tracker in there, and it was supposed to be, I forget which airport. It was supposed to plan to arrive in Chicago, but it didn't. So they were looking in Chicago, what's going on, where's the shipment? And it was nowhere to be found. It's $1 million. But next thing they know, because of our tracker, they figured out where in tarmac it was stuck in Amsterdam at an airport. And they were able to call the airport, they were called the air carrier, and figure out exactly what to do. And next thing you know, 2-3 days later, it made it to Chicago and no problem. But if there was no tracker, those servers might have stayed there for weeks, sometimes months, because nobody just you never know.
Well, it's true. So I go back to my days as a freight forwarder, and I think about how many shipments got lost in the airline warehouse.
Lost, yeah.
Like they got lost, and they were in there somewhere, but it took weeks upon weeks for it to either be found or for them to come back and say, sorry, we can't find it. And then to have to call the customer. I mean, I dreaded those phone calls every single time, because you have to call the customer and you're like, the airline lost your shipment, but they're looking for it, but it's going to take a couple weeks. Nobody wants to make those kind of calls.
Another one that was really interesting, this was with Maersk, and we did a big pilot with them, and one of the insights that we found was just kind of a little bit. I never thought about it. So there was what was it, LA? So that the port of LA all the way to Memphis in this case, and we noticed we did a few thousand shipments, and we noticed that carriers were taking a few routes, but two main routes. And if you looked at one of the routes and you looked at Google Maps, it was quicker than the other one.
Okay.
But the truck drivers were taking longer on the quicker Google Maps than the other one.
Yeah.
So people were taking, because they were using Google Maps as some kind of
Right
when driving with the truck.
Mm-hmm.
But the other route that looked longer, they would get there 2 days ahead. What? Not like one, like actually almost 2 days ahead of time.
Okay.
And they figured out the reason is after analysis and everything, we figured out the reason it had to do with truck stops.
Okay.
The route that was shorter had only a couple of truck stops on the way.
Okay.
So the driver would say, you know what? I'm going to just stop here because by the time I get to the other truck stop, my HOS might run out. I need to be earlier. Yeah. So they would sleep and they would just stay there for 8 hours and waste an extra time. And then they would stop, obviously, on the next truck stop. Mm-hmm. But the other route that was longer had multiple truck stops. So they would hit the limit on driving time and then they would stop. Whereas the other one had 8-hour buffer or 7-hour buffer, and they just kept rolling it in. And next thing you know, even though it was a shorter route, it took longer.
It's fascinating that we can learn these days. Because again, I go back to, being a logistics provider, and I just wish that I had all this data. I feel like I would have been way more productive. All right. So finally then.
Ground truth data.
What? Yeah, ground truth data. Exactly. So finally then, what does the future hold? I mean, you have a free survey report called the State of Visibility 2024, and that is now available. We're going to link it in the show notes. So give us a little bit of a taste of the trends, challenges, opportunities that we can expect for the second half of 2024.
I don't have the crystal ball as I have it on the little technology as much on on the freight market. I hope there's going to be good signs of the freight market coming. Definitely will be back in 2025, but hopefully it'll start turning around a little bit in 2024. Should stay. I mean, I wish it was better than it is, to be honest, but it's not. Hopefully the interest rates will go down this year, but we don't see that happening either. The interest rate might stay the same as they were in 2023 and 2024, and then next thing you know, maybe we'll approve it after the election in 2025. But the one thing that we've noticed more and more is customers are realizing that to get 100% visibility, to really understand what our supply chains, they're starting to embrace quote unquote Internet of Things and IoT. And that's one thing we saw from State of Visibility. A year ago, only 25% said they're using some type of device, but it would jumped up to 50+ this year.
Wow.
And if you look at companies like Samsara, which do fleet, construction sites, just helping companies with other operational, running their operations better, not in supply chain, but it's just in general, in everything. A lot of our Internet of Things devices, camera, sensors, those are really providing that, like I said, ground truth data, what's happening with operations, and customers are realizing more. And one thing maybe just to mention, we will be releasing new product in June. So I'm really excited about that. That's coming up in early June. You'll see the press release. And I think the market that we talked about, this is going to be for a larger market. So more people can use it now.
Oh, I'm excited. You're going to have to come back and talk about it. And also, if anybody wants to go and get the free copy of that report, make sure to go to the show notes for this particular episode, or you can head over to tive.com as well. So have you ever been on a long road trip in the middle of nowhere when suddenly the GPS loses its signal, your gas tank is only a quarter full, and there's no sign of civilization? Well, that's what the daily challenge of managing supply chains without clear visibility can feel like. The good news is that since 2015, Tive has been that consistent, reliable voice saying, turn left ahead. Tive provides end-to-end shipment visibility, real-time location and condition tracking, and active monitoring of your shipment so every shipment arrives on time and in full. And did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you, Drones are providing a new element to sustainable logistics from Rwanda to the U.S. to slash emissions and expenses. But how much less CO2 do they produce compared to electric cars? Well, over 5 years, they've completed 200,000 deliveries, with each flight producing roughly 30 times less CO2 per mile than an average electric car, which is quite the savings. So if you want to find out more, you can check Tive out over at Tive, Tive.com. A massive thanks to Krenar for joining me and to the team at Tive for making this episode happen. Krenar, thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really enjoyed it.